Alright, we are laying underneath the 52, and I want to point something out here. For anybody who's not familiar with these cars and the way they came stock, this rear end is called a torque tube rear end, and it's got a differential and rear axle that looks very similar in a lot of ways to what you find under modern, or more modern vehicle. Far side there, you can see the axle tube over there, right here. That's the spring, of course, right there. This is the drive shaft, or where the drive shaft would come down, and it comes into the differential of the rear end here. Now, all of this enclosed action right here, that's where your U-joint should be, or where it would be on a modern vehicle. But on these, it doesn't actually have a U-joint. Instead, you've got what's called a torque tube. You've got a solid piece coming down into your pinion, matches up with your ring gear, and all of that is happening inside this case. And there's really no effective way to do anything with that, because you can't really shorten or lengthen these effectively. If you go to the other end of this, there's the exhaust in the way. Go to the other end of this, and up here is where we slid the transmission out of the end of the torque tube. You can see that actually the emergency brake, the e-brake, the spring, the return spring is actually attached to the torque tube, because it doesn't spin on the outside. It spins on the inside of that shaft. On the outside is actually, it's static. It doesn't rotate at all. It moves up and down a little bit with the rear end. All of the rotational forces are all happening inside of it. What you really are seeing here then is why we need to change this out. There's no way to do any sort of hot rodding to this. It's just, it is what it is. And so we're going to get rid of this. We're going to be cutting this out today. And I'm going to be taking down the stock springs as well. And then we'll go from there. So that's what's going on. First thing I need to do, just disconnect that spring. It's attached right up here. Whoops, there's my finger. There's the spring attached right here to the torque tube. That's got to come off. And then we'll start disassembling stuff in the back end here. I don't think I'm going to need any torches or anything like that. I think we're just going to unbolt everything and drop it down. So that's where we're at. Well, as you can probably tell from the massive rust and wrenches and drifts and such sitting around, I've been getting most of the things out by detaching them with the wrenches, air ratchets and whatnot. But this back shackle, I got the bolts off, but it's frozen inside the spring. So against my preference, I am going to just cut off the studs, and then I'll worry about driving it out later. So let's get some cutting done. There we go. It was just the bottom one. I got that one cut, and the whole thing just popped right off, so we're good to go. Success. All right, well, a couple things you want to make sure that you do. I got everything done on this one as far as I know. I guess we'll find out here in a second, right? But things that I've been tripped up by in the past, e-brake cables, you want to get those cut or detached. Any sort of wires running to the rear end, you don't see that a whole lot of stuff this old, but on more modern vehicles you will. Definitely, obviously, you got to have all of your bolts that hold the springs in place and the shackles in place. Those all have to be out. That's obvious. Brake lines, it's unlikely you're going to have any fuel lines in the way. It's unlikely you're going to have any exhaust in the way, but something you might want to look for. And then something that I probably, if there's any one thing that I tend to forget, it's usually some sort of a shock absorber mount somewhere. This one had two that popped up through the trunk, so they were really easy to get at. It was really easy to take those off. That should be it. So now I'm going to jack up the back end of the car, and hopefully the suspension will continue to sit on the two roller stands. As I start to roll it backward, the front of the torque tube is going to drop down onto the cardboard, and everything should slide right out. I do see from here, though, I've got a drip pan I need to move out of the way. So I'll move that out of the way real quick so I don't splash into that, because that would suck. And then we'll be ready to jack up the back end and roll her away. Two other things that are also worth noting. One is that I went ahead and I chalked the front wheels because I do not want the car rolling away on me. There is a jack stand on the passenger side. I took it out of the driver's side because I'm going to need to pull the suspension out that direction. So it's just one less thing to be in the way. And then also I did my best to sweep up around the area right where I'm going to be rolling, because there's nothing's going to mess up those roller dollies. Nothing's going to cause more trouble than like chunks of rust, little rocks, stuff like that. So here we go. All right, so the back end is down, but I'm going to need to lower the front end, I think, manually. It's kind of caught up in the hangers on both sides, so I'm going to have to pull that down. There we go. We'll do the same thing on the passenger side. There we go. Let's finish jacking her up. Alright, the jack is bottomed out. You can see I put a 4x6 up across the rear cross brace on the frame to give me a little more leverage. But we're clear of everything under the frame, so now I just got to roll it out. There's the torque tube coming down the front, running my cardboard, which is perfect. Beautiful. She's out. So that's how I do that. Again, I just put the cardboard down in the front just in case it leaked a little bit of fluid. I know there was a bunch of gack all over that stub that went into the transmission. I didn't know what it was from, didn't know if it was leaking around the rear main on the engine or if it was the rear seal of the transmission, but either way, it's out. So that's how I do it. I'm sure, again, as you will always hear me say, there's other ways to get this done, but for your average guy in your average garage, that's the way I would go about it. Hey, you guys be safe out there. Take care. God bless.